Dawson, I'm gonna move you up just one slot, so that kind of gives you a little bit of time so
Perfect.
you're not stressing out.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I think we'll give everyone just one more minute and get started so we're not behind on schedule. Okay, everyone, I think we'll get started, and if more people trickle in, that's okay. Welcome to the third workshop. Today's main focus of the workshop, as you know, is research presentation and dissemination. And the main focus and purpose of this is to give our MURPH scholars the opportunity to share what they've been up to the past few semesters and what they've been working on, and they can share it with our peers and some of our faculty members that are on as well. And to also receive some feedback. So we're hoping that you can get some feedback and you can improve the design of your presentations, keep practicing those presentation skills in time for the upcoming conferences. Now, as you know, our MURPH scholars had to attend at least one of the two upcoming conferences, and most of you are going to the UBCO Interdisciplinary Health Conference on March 10th. And some of you are also going to the MURPH conference in Vancouver. Now, in the past, these conferences were held in person. And when we first held the MURPH workshop back in the day, before COVID had hit, we actually had the opportunity to print everyone's posters and had a mini conference of our own. We would go around, look at the posters and provide feedback. But since COVID hit, everything has gone virtual, as you know. So this year, our students are allotted 3 minutes to give their presentation. So we're going to mirror the same thing for today, and you guys can give your presentations and we'll provide you with some feedback. So students, make sure you also have those evaluation sheets that we had emailed you. We will make sure that after each presentation, we'll take some time and give you some time to fill out those sheets, which will be emailed back to us and shared with the groups. Also, another thing to mention, this is a safe place. We want you to actually participate and provide each other with feedback today. Tell us the good and the bad. Let's help each other really improve these presentations in time for the conferences. We just want each other to succeed. So let's help each other out. And just to make it a little bit more fun and motivate you a bit, the top 2 groups will be receiving some prizes as well. So without further ado, we do have Andrea and Ria, Dr. Little and Dr. Lee students who are going to start us off.
Hi, I'll just share my screen for presentation.
Yeah, you can share your screen, Ria.
Okay. Okay, so can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hello everybody, I'm Ria Naik and I'm a second year biochemistry student, and I'm currently working with Rio on the MURPH project, which is mainly focused on reducing aerosol transmissions, especially a very valid concern in this COVID pandemic. So just to provide a brief background on this project, so we know that the COVID virus has a negative charge on its surface. So we have developed a C-polar material, which basically has a positive charge, and this positive charge will help generate an electrostatic attraction between the negatively charged COVID particle and the positively charged C-polar material. And with this technology, we are hoping to reduce the aerosol transmissions in indoor environments. So the methods, Andrea will provide a brief background about that.
Yeah, so there's two main methods that we're going to be using to validate the use of this fabric in indoor settings. Now, the first method is going to serve to actually validate the physical properties themselves of the C-polar material and also experimentally test its function. So to do this, we'll be creating a simulated aerosol and releasing it in proximity of a piece of the C-polar fabric. And then we will attempt to measure the particle speed, concentration, and also the direction when they're subjected to the material's electric field. Now, in addition to this, we'll also be using an electrometer to characterize the material itself and obtain solid numbers to quantify its electrostatic properties. Now, the second method will serve to actually prove that the amount of DNA and organic material attached to the fabric is actually present. So to do this, we developed a qPCR protocol to actually quantify the amount of biological particles that are captured by the C-polar material. And to do this, a non-coding DNA template was developed and will be used to perform serial dilutions and obtain a bunch of standard curves for the material. Now, finally, we'll be using a cyber green solution along with a primer that will help us track the double-stranded DNA amplification on the material itself. Now, both of these methods will hopefully go a long way to prove the effectiveness of the C-polar material from two different facets and prove that it's actually effective at reducing aerosol transmission.
So the future work of this project, we are hoping to develop a robust qPCR protocol that will help us to detect and quantify the DNA amount in each serial dilution and confirm the electrostatic properties of the C-polar material. So currently we don't have data from the qPCR, but when we get the data and if we detect trapped simulated DNA material from the qPCR or nebulizer testing, we can validate the effectiveness of C-polar.
So in summary, our study's main goal is to verify that the C-polar material is actually effective at reducing harmful viral particles in the air around it. And hopefully, this verification will lead to its future introduction in many indoor spaces, such as hospitals or classrooms. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
Great job, you guys. So we do have a few minutes until 4:20, the next group that goes. This is the time for us to discuss the presentations. Ria, if you could actually just keep sharing your screen, maybe we can even keep going through the slides, point out what we can improve and help each other out. Everyone's feedback is valuable here. So we can go right to the beginning and go through everything. Okay, so here, it would be nice if we could have your title be more prominent. So you jumped into the virus right away and I didn't know what your project was about. So it'd be nice to have maybe even a title page, maybe some faces of your picture. So when you transition and speak and switch to your partner speaking,
Sure.
it would help out. I did see your title was on the bottom, but if you bring it up to the top and everyone sees what your topic is about, then you can grab their attention with what your background information is, what the gap in question is.
Okay. So,
I think the reason, if I can interject, the reason why we didn't do that is because for the conference itself, it says that they'll provide a title slide and they'll like introduce the two speakers. So they actually said to not have a title slide. So that's why we
Okay.
didn't have one.
Okay, if they told you not to have it, that's fine then. Make sure
yeah.
make sure when they're presenting you guys' names, do they share also what departments you're from? Because the multidisciplinary aspect is really important of all these projects.
Okay. I guess they're gonna share our information, but just to be on the safer side, we'll just add it somewhere on the back on the slide, I guess,
Okay.
because there's no title slide. So
Yeah, and maybe what we could also do is send out a MURPH logo, which was just kind of created in the last month or so. So we can send that out
Okay.
and maybe have everybody add that to their slides so that you know, so people know that you're a part of the program.
Definitely.
Does anyone want to share any other thoughts about this first attention grabbing slide that's supposed to provide the background, the main question at hand, and the gaps? Any thoughts? How to make it more attention grabbing? Did you kind of miss what the main question was even about? You just saw the virus and thought it was a COVID related project? No thoughts? Okay, let's go to your next slide as well. Let's take a look at your methods.
Actually, Paige, I think wanted to.
Paige had your hands up. I didn't see. Go ahead, Paige. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a quick suggestion. It might just be because I'm tired, but I noticed that there was a lot of jargon used, or I think I noticed that at least, and it wasn't necessarily explained, and that can make it really difficult for multidisciplinary when not everybody is in your field.
okay.
So like in the slides or in the like talking?
In your talking, I believe.
Okay.
On the backgrounds or methods page for this.
Sorry, I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. I think it was mostly the methods when you're
Okay.
describing different techniques and stuff. But
Okay, I see.
I think that's
Yes,
I think that's a good comment. Some people might not be familiar with what qPCR is, for example.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. We'll make those changes. Thank you for the suggestion. Are we good to move on to the next slide?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so in this slide, do you want everyone's attention to go to the picture first, or do you want them to focus on the story and the writing first?
I would say the picture is worth 1,000 words, like the cliche phrase. So I guess the picture is more prominent.
Okay, if the picture is your main selling point of this slide, try making it a little bit more clear because it is a little bit blurry.
Okay.
The methods is usually where you will lose most of your audience members. So try to make it like the picture is usually the most helpful thing that shows the clear steps of what you've done. No one is typically going to look at your writing. They're going to listen to whoever is talking and look at the pictures.
Okay. Sounds good.
So I was just I'm thinking maybe the methods, the title itself, it could be smaller. We could look like not the font because you have a wide space there, and that's probably one reason that your picture is small. So maybe I think you can narrow that top area, and so you can enlarge your image. The other thing, probably you can, if you review again some of the text that you have put here, you can remove some of the wordings. For example, the third one, you said for this research project. So this is really not needed. So this is your research. So you can just say a non-coding DNA template was developed. So, or something. So some of the thing could be actually removed, so to make it so they can easily grab the, you can convey the main point.
Yep, definitely. Sounds good.
I also agree with that. And I think that it would make the I think it would make your methods section more clear if you either just had the graphic or just had the text on this slide, because with both of these things on the slide as well as your presentation, it's kind of hard to like figure out what to focus on, which can be confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Are we good to move on to the next slide, or?
Go ahead. Okay, again, try to minimize your wording as much as possible so they can read a short synopsis of what's to come. Even if you want to provide a whole sentence, if you highlight some of the parts that want to stand out, those are going to be your attention grabbing pieces. So making things bolder or underlining, anything to make your points stand out so they can even read those parts and pick up what your information is about.
Okay.
Another quick suggestion. So I'm not sure why you went for that kind of, it's a bar or band that it has 4 colors, but it looks like, but they have three kind of columns. So maybe you can just use something that if you want one, like each number goes into a column of one color, maybe you can just use it, make change. So there are 3 colors, each has a different columns with different, which each has a separate color. You know what I mean? So there are 4, but it's just the numbering, and then it gets confusing. Or maybe it doesn't look nice, not confused, but it doesn't look nice. Yeah, maybe you can.
No, definitely.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Natasha, you timed the presentation, right?
Yes, the presentation timing was okay.
Perfect. Your speed of speaking as well for the presentation was great. Just make sure that when you're practicing, you can practice that transition to the next speaker and make that a little bit smoother.
Sure.
Any other tips and tricks from our audience members for Ria and Andrea for either the slides or speaking?
Just want to say great job. I know it's so hard to go first and put yourself out there. So you did a great job in great job answering the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Andrea and Tristan, Dr. Holtzman and Dr. Key students. If you'd like to share your screen.
Tristan, are you there? Can you maybe share it because I'm on my iPad?
Give me 2 seconds here.
I could maybe try. Can everybody see?
Yes.
Okay, it's working. Okay.
Oh, were you able to get it, Andrea? I was just pulling it
Yeah,
up.
I think
Okay, that works wonderfully.
Yeah.
Awesome. We all ready to go?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll start us off here. Hi, everyone. My name is Tristan, and I'm here with Andrea, and we are working with Dr. Elizabeth Keys and Dr. Susan Holtzman on sleep and family relationships before and during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a study of Central Okanagan families with preschool-aged children. Next slide. So what is our study, the background, the objectives? Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that sleep across the lifespan of Canadians has generally become worse. It's known that poor sleep can have long-term negative impacts on child and youth outcomes, as well as family relationships. We think, therefore, it's of critical importance that we seek to understand the changes in both sleep and family relationships that have been brought about by this pandemic. And the current study that we're engaged in is investigating how the COVID-19 pandemic has influenced these variables within Okanagan families who have young children between the ages of 2 and 5. It utilizes Qualtrics. It's an online survey tool, if you're not familiar with it, to capture participant data entry, which we are hoping to analyze and compare to a similar data set that was obtained in 2019. And our objective will be to determine the extent of the changes we've seen to sleep and family relationships within families and how this new data compares to our previously collected data. Next slide. So what we expect, our hypothesis is that we expect that compared to our pre-pandemic data, our new participants are going to report poorer sleep quality, as well as lower family relationship quality. And we expect to find an additional correlation between sleep quality and family relationship quality, and are interested in how each of these variables might cyclically affect one another, meaning that poor sleep quality affects relationship quality, which in turn then might affect sleep quality. And we expect these correlations to be stronger within the pandemic cohort than it is within the pre-pandemic data set. So I'm going to pass the presentation off to Andrea in the next slide, who is going to continue and conclude.
Okay, thank you, Tristan. I will continue by describing the methods of our study. I would first like to acknowledge that I'm presenting today on the traditional territory of the Syilx Okanagan Nation. Our quantitative study will collect data during the current 2022 COVID-19 wave through an online survey tool, Qualtrics, and compare these to a pre-pandemic 2019 cross-sectional data set that obtained data on technology use, sleep, and well-being from 390 Okanagan mothers of children aged 2 to 5 years. The questionnaire will ask about parent, child, and partner relationship quality, child sleep duration, parental sleep quality and fatigue, child and parental well-being and mental health, and child and household socio-demographic characteristics. Participants will be recruited through social media, community partners, and community boards. We have currently submitted the ethics application and will begin data collection soon. So to analyze our data, a merged de-identified data set will be created from both cohorts using SPSS software. Statistical tests will be conducted, including chi-square and independent sample t-tests to determine if significant differences exist between samples and socio-demographic characteristics. We will also use multivariate analysis of covariance to determine differences between the two samples exist for sleep child sleep duration, parental sleep quality and fatigue, and family relationship quality. So what are the implications of our study? It is that understanding changes in sleep brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic and the effects on family relationships is crucial to developing effective interventions to reduce long-term impacts. Our findings will inform programs of local nonprofit organizations aimed at mitigating the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, such as those offering family services and counseling, and improve understanding of how sleep and family relationships in families with preschool-age children have been impacted during the pandemic. So we have come to the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening, and we welcome your questions.
Great job, you guys. Okay, so for consistency purposes, since the conference will be providing that introductory slide, it seems like we can all just jump straight into our background information. Great job on your speed, on your introductions, even switching to your next speaker. That was very well done and smooth. Maybe you can keep sharing your presentation,
okay,
Andrea. We can go through the slides together. And students, I know there's a few minutes between each presentation, but if you do need more time to fill out the evaluation sheets, these presentations will be recorded and shared with everyone, so you can you don't have to worry. You can fill out the evaluation sheets afterwards as well. Okay, so let's jump into your second slide. And hear everyone's feedback on the background and objectives. What are everyone's thoughts on this first attention grabbing slide? The logo on the right top corner, you can tell it's something to do with sleep.
I liked the background and how it was provided. I do want to mention that the presentation was a little bit over and they're really strict with time. So you have to stay really focused, staying on within your 3 minutes.
Okay.
What was our time?
It was definitely over 3 minutes. So they're very picky. It's kind of like they should give you a warning when you've got 30 seconds left, but sometimes they may or may not. And you kind of lose out just by being over time.
Do you know how far over 3 minutes we were, just so we know how much to bring it back?
Yeah, at least 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think like because for this one currently, like I added the title and end slide just for the MURPH specifically, but I know that the specification for the conference is just these 4 slides. So I think if we were to just cut the beginning and end, it would be closer to that. But I thought it would be weird if I just presented it like this here. So I added this slide, but
Fair enough.
I think if
yeah.
we were to cut that out, that would be closer.
Okay. The other comment I had is like there seems to be a little bit of overlap between you and Tristan. And maybe you could cut some of the wording out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
This intro slide really tells you what the project is about. So you're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic affecting sleep. Why can sleep affect your family dynamics and emotional or educational outcomes? And then you go into the overall objective. The overall objective, you could make it shorter and more attention grabbing. That will be the main thing that everyone will look at to see what your project is about right away. Any other comments, everyone, before we jump into their next slide?
Sure. I think that this first slide, actually, I think it's actually really nicely laid out. It's really clear. It's like, you know, the background, what the impact is on families, and then what this project's trying to accomplish. So I think it's actually quite nice, and it's a nice balance of text and white space. Only a tiny little comment is that the picture looks a little stretched somehow. So I don't know if you can like bring it in a little bit. So it looks like it's been pulled.
Okay.
So that would be my only comment for this one around the graphics.
Yeah. I think it's just a formatting
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, definitely just be
But even that looks a bit better. But yeah, sometimes when you try and make them fit, they can kind of look a little disproportionate.
Right.
But overall, I thought it was a very nice slide.
Okay, Andrea and Tristan, you can go to the next slide. We can all take a peek. Great job on stating your hypothesis and highlighting the keywords and the takeaways. That's really attention grabbing.
I actually thought this slide was excellent as well.
Mm-hmm.
So one more little graphic suggestion. I think on the previous slide for your bullets, you didn't have periods at the end of the sentence, and on the slide you do. So it's always a good check at the very end is to check through the whole presentation and make sure you're consistent on that, whether there's a period or not.
Yeah.
Some people look specifically, if you're looking for that, you really notice it.
Right. Let's get rid of that.
Okay, let's jump into the next one. Okay, methods, usually for recruitment, I think you can skip that. Everyone usually knows, like for recruitment, you use like social media, community partners, and advertisement. So if you want to, because the other parts are so texty and lengthy, you can omit the
Right.
recruitment part.
So we can just delete that. Okay. Right.
It would also let us increase the font size or increase the spacing, which would make the rest of the data a little bit easier to read for people. And we could even, Andrew, we could even split that and move the picture to the middle. Yeah.
So on your earlier slides, did you underline the title or the heading? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Oh, it was. It's underlined throughout. Okay.
Right. I think that's a bit better.
So just the old period consistency there again.
Right.
So the first set has periods and the second paragraph doesn't.
Okay, it looks much better already.
Yeah, that looks very good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Anyone else? Do you want to add anything to this slide before we jump into implications? Okay, implications.
Oh, I found one more on the previous slide.
Let's go
Sorry.
back.
Well, you've got two N's. You refer to N twice there, pre-pandemic and during pandemic, and one N is a capital and one is small. Is that, should that be the same? Or maybe
Yeah.
I don't know what, if it's one's like a sample, one's a population, or if they should be the
Oh,
same.
I see.
So yeah, told me as should both be lowercase for sample size.
Okay,
Thank you for catching that.
sure.
Yeah.
This is clear. Nice highlighting.
Yeah, I agree, and makes me excited to hear what the results will be. Be very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks good. You just need to take away that period on the first sentence.
Yeah, just have a clear look at the end and make sure all of your headings, like some of them like might have a colon, might not. So make sure it's consistent throughout as well.
Right.
Okay. Any other
Yeah.
comments, everyone, before we jump into our next presenters? Okay, great job. Next up, we have Paige and Denise, Dr. Milani and Dr. Cha students.
I think, did we switch that potentially? So I could present first or no?
Dawson,
Am I
you'll go
presenting a little later?
at 5:50.
Oh, at 5:50. Okay.
Or you, sorry, you needed to go up earlier. Your appointment was at
Yeah,
4:50.
well, I have a call from 5 to 6:30, and the quiz should just be at the start, but not 100% certain. So
Let's have him go now. Is that
Let's
okay?
go, Dawson. Yeah,
okay,
pull up
that
your
would be
presentation,
cool
no
too.
worries.
Thank you.
So to start them off, Dawson and David are Dr. Chow and Dr. Ronquillo students. Share your screen on your end.
How do I just bring it into?
If you go into on the bottom right, there's like a little toilet looking icon. You can click on it and it'll go big screen.
Oh, 1 second.
Right now we
Unsure.
see the Word document as well. So you
Yeah,
can minimize that.
yeah. Sorry, is this fine for everybody? Fits in? And we'll go
Yeah,
here.
you've
Okay,
centered it
perfect.
okay. Yeah, it's fine.
That's good. Okay, thank you. And are we ready to start? Okay, so I'm Dawson, everybody. Just before I start, I would like to acknowledge that this presentation is taking place on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Sioux Okanagan Nation. I'd also like to mention that just a super important feature of this project is the whole interdisciplinary aspect in which we've gathered researchers from a variety of educational backgrounds. So I'd just like to mention our team members. So we have Dr. Charlene Ronquillo, who's in nursing, Dr. Shirley Chow, who is in social work, and Dr. Xiao Li in electrical and computer engineering, as well as myself, an undergrad in biochemistry, and David Shiflett, who can't be with us today for this, but he is also an undergraduate, but in psychology. So I'll be speaking today on our project, Establishing Foundations for Equity Considered Artificial Intelligence in Community Health. So let's start with the basics here. So our project focuses on the clinical documentation from electronic health records as the data that feeds into the health-related artificial intelligence technologies. So thinking about this data, crucial characteristics of the data are its quality, its quantity, and the format that it's captured within the electronic health records, which is used in a lot of medical settings, especially for nurses. A challenge with this clinical documentation is the potential for it to transfer implicit clinician biases within the documentation. For example, there's evidence that clinicians may not collect data as consistently about some population subgroups versus others, which results in missed data. In the context of health equity and making sure that information about individual social determinants of health and social context are captured, there are questions of how clinicians think about health equity, what counts as health equity data, and how is health equity documented in EHRs. So another challenge relates to how EHRs and organizational policies around documentations potentially shape how clinical documentation is completed. There's even evidence supporting that the EHR is actually a terrible fit for the nursing practice in general. So we're looking at how is that affecting patient care. So unfortunately, this, like I said, this has inherent biases, particularly around marginalized groups. This includes groups of varying ethnicity, race, age, sex, or physical ability, amongst a lot of other groups. So that's a large portion of people that are in patient care settings. So like this is really relevant to a lot of people. So the problem with that is that having these biases or inequities can prevent these people from searching out and seeking healthcare when they need it in the future. So we want to deal with that. I'll go to the next slide here. So our project is currently working to establish the foundations for a larger program of research that will leverage the use of community health nurses clinical documentation in order to build an AI technology, which we will incorporate the health equity data into. So this is going to be a three-part project, which I'm going to touch on a little bit later. So in order to get to that point though, we must start with the data and understand how our data produced and documented by clinicians, in particular community health nurses. So we're focusing on these nurses because they're a profession who spend a lot of time with patients and often in their homes. So they give this awesome vantage point where they can see and witness the lived experience of health equity considerations like housing, socioeconomic status, experience of both privilege and marginalization, amongst many other factors. So our ethics application has recently been approved. So we're set to begin interviews within the middle to late March here. So here we'll be interviewing these community health nurses in Interior Health and Vancouver Coast Health. And these interviews will be conducted one-on-one in Zoom. And we'll focus on a small variety of questions, such as how do community health nurses think about health equity? How do community health nurses document health equity? And how does the current design of electronic health records shape clinical documentation? In order to develop these understandings and our health equity dictionary, we will conduct these interviews using grounded theory. This approach is flexible, practical, and it's solution oriented, which is why we're using it. And it allows us, grounded theory basically means that we are grounding our theory in the data that we're getting. And this is adapting as we're going from interview to interview to interview, so we can get the best and most relatable results possible. We're going to be trying to recruit nurses from different populations and geographical settings because that's going to help us get a more rounded data. Here in the fourth slide here, our last slide, we have kind of combining the three studies together. So as I said, this is just part one in the study. This is, we're making this gold standard corpus of language that we're getting from our literature review and we're getting from our interviews. And this is going to be going into study two, where now this algorithm for health equity is going to be made using this language that we're obtaining. And then in study three, this is going to get put into a clinical setting, and hopefully it will prevent health disparities in the clinical setting. So that's the goals for that. I'd just like to finish off by thanking my primary investigators, Drs. Lee, Chow, and Rapio. Just give a special thanks to the MURPH program and its facilitators. Thank you.
Great job. Thanks, Dawson. Let's head to the
Sorry, that
first
was
slide.
quite long. I feel like I definitely went over, but there's a lot to fit, but I need to like tune it down still yet.
What
Yeah.
was the time, Natasha?
6 minutes, so got a lot of chopping to do, and this is one of the toughest things you'll have to do, is trying to get what you're trying to convey into 3 short minutes.
Definitely, yeah, no, that's going to be important. We'll have to go through some revisions on that and cut out anything. I think there might be a few things that I duplicated, so.
Yeah, like I timed your background at 3 minutes, so that needs to be cut significantly. And I think our previous presenters did a really nice job of getting to the point of the objectives of the project, background in that one slide really quickly. You literally, I would say you don't have more than 30 seconds to get to that point.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know.
Any tips and tricks for Dawson's group from our audience that you'd like to see on that first slide?
Lisa here, just a small point. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of text in this slide, so simplifying it will be helpful to get the time down. Also, just in the title, so foundations, you probably want that to be a small f, just so that you're consistent in your capitalization there.
Awesome,
the other
yeah.
comment I had about this slide, like in the goal statement, I just wondered about the word tackling. Like, is that the term that's used for the study? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the study, but it kind of comes across as a bit of it's a bit of an informal term, which can still be all right, but it's a bit vague. Like, so does that mean like examining, or does it mean like changing practices, or it's kind of like, well, what does that actually mean? Yeah,
I know it could like change it to examining or considering, or yeah, I'll bring that up with the group and see if we
Or
can,
like,
'cause
or
I
even
agree.
addressing, like if you're going to be doing something about it, then, you know, addressing could be another word. Just something to think about there.
Yeah, no, I like addressing, but I'll bring it up with the group, of course.
Yeah, 3 minutes is a very short amount of time. So you have to try to think of these as kind of like an elevator pitch. You're trying to just quickly show them what's your big question at hand, provide them back with background, and then what's your study objective and what you're going to solve. One
Definitely, yeah.
thing about the background of this, I like that it's a white background, but the big UBC logo in the back actually like makes it look blurry, and it kept making me look at the UBC logo. So even if you make it a complete white background and put the UBC logo in a corner or something, that's totally fine. But it's the one thing that I kept looking at in the background.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. That's good to know, though. Perfect.
Any other comments for Dawson's first slide before we jump into the second one? Okay. Go ahead, Dawson.
One comment I would make here is that documentation was used 3 times in the first slide. Here we see in the upper left, the word capture rather than documentation is used. I would recommend consistency in wording.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, definitely.
So I have a couple of comments on this slide. So establishing foundations, is that the same as the title?
Yes, yeah.
So if it is, I don't know that you really need it there, because it's just restating the title kind of further into the presentation. So not sure that it really needs to be there.
Yeah, we could put something more relevant.
The other thing I thought, just in terms of format, was just that there's a bit of imbalance in the slide. Like there's a big piece of white space up at the you know, the top right corner there, but then the text on the left is kind of scrunched together, like it's quite tightly.
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
so
as
it's
well,
like if
maybe I
you could kind of spread it out a little,
like
and
pull
you could,
it over. Yeah.
Or pull one, or like just have a balance of the statement around that circle
Definitely.
rather than all on the side might help space that out a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that.
And so this slide, like, how would you describe this slide? Because I think when you were talking, like this is kind of almost a background rationale type text that you have here. But then when you were talking, I think you were talking more with some methods stuff. You were saying some things about how it was going to be done. So I wasn't that clear on the slide. Is it methods or is it like background rationale?
Yeah, it was, I mean, I guess I kind of combined it a bit of both. So we started with a little bit of background, and then it did go into the methods, which could have actually just been moved onto the next slide and separated that way. And I could have cut out the methods from this, which would have shortened up some time as well.
Yeah, that would be one that could help shorten the speaking part of it. Yeah, I mean, I think there's some really interesting ideas in here, but they're a little hard to just sort of pull out from the the graphics.
Okay, go ahead, Dawson. You can go to the next one. You have 1 more minute and then we'll switch to the next group. Okay, methodology section. This was quite lengthy. We need to shorten this as much as possible.
Okay, yeah, I can, yeah, I'll just have to work on that. There's a lot that I can pull out of it and just even condense it. So I can still capture a good amount of information, but make it flow nicer and shorter.
Even
Maybe
the image.
oh, sorry. Maybe a flow chart would work for this to help cut the text. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider. Yeah, I will bring that up as well. Thank you.
Okay, for the sake of time, thanks, Dawson. I know you'll have to shorten this and get better at it over time, but your energy was great when you were presenting. It looked like you were really into the topic and were knowledgeable about it. So once you shorten it, I'm sure it will come off really great in the 3 minutes.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you everybody for all your insight. It's gonna be very helpful when I'm like doing revisions and stuff. So yeah, seriously, thank you. And thanks everybody for listening.
Of course, thank you. Okay, just for the sake of time and for our scholars and their appointments that they have to go to, we have some classes that they have to run off to. I'm going to change the schedule and have Dylan and Alicia and Madison go next, Dr. Olkey and Dr. Reed students.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Megan. And can you all hear me all right? Apologies, I'm in a very noisy environment. Oh, cheers. Love to see it. And Natty, Alicia, it's great to see you both. Would any of you two care to screen share, or shall I? Have a great class. No problem. All right, my friends, I can absolutely go ahead and screen share. Can everyone see that screen? Does that look all right? All right, lovely. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to Alicia to get us started whenever they feel most comfortable to do so.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maddie, and I'm one of the students working on this project. So healthcare harm emerges as a result of an untoward interaction within the healthcare system. This harm can result from diagnostic errors, medication errors, or incomplete transfer of knowledge within the boundaries of care. Although most often unintentional, these events can have significant negative impacts on the health, quality of life, and well-being of patients and healthcare providers. Current administrative approaches that respond to harm focus on attributing blame and punishment on the provider, and ultimately the needs of all involved often go unmet. A restorative approach fosters a relational way of thinking and being, supporting just relations between people, communities, and institutions. Restorative approach has the potential to change how we address harm in our healthcare systems by facilitating a journey towards healing for all parties involved. This is a novel approach in the healthcare system that has yet to be explored. Our objective was to develop and evaluate a pilot curriculum for health authority staff about restorative approach and its application in addressing healthcare harm. We can go to the next slide and I'll pass it off to Alicia.
Perfect, thanks. So the way that we conducted this research, first we went and, we of course looked at articles and the data that was already out there. However, there wasn't that much research to begin with. So we conducted various interviews with people from various health authorities and different disciplines to collect more information about the restorative approach and the different perspectives about the use and the potential benefits of it within healthcare. We were then able to incorporate these findings into our curriculum, which was developed as a hybrid course. We created a hybrid curriculum that was to be delivered through 2 self-guided modules, each about 45 minutes, and then 2 corresponding 1-hour group learning sessions to be facilitated through Zoom. The self-guided modules were published through a learning management system on Canvas, and then which was followed by the facilitated sessions, which was developed to have participants engage in conversation to further their learning as a group.
Wonderful, thank you, friends. And as for the results, one of our main objectives had been to evaluate the pilot curriculum following development. And so after it was released and published to health authorities, a qualitrix was released immediately, of which used an amalgam of open-ended and closed-ended questions so as to evaluate the effectiveness of the curriculum in introducing the principles of a restorative approach. The questions ranged from before the curriculum. I felt that I did not have the knowledge of an alternative approach to healthcare harm, and were evaluated based on whether the participant strongly disagreed or strongly agreed within that range. Each of the results were then assessed based upon their standard deviation, their mean, maximum, and minimum, and the results were compiled so as to then use in the future adaptations of the curriculum. Now, the results are still in progress. There are 3 sample groups. Each of the sample groups associate with the health authorities by which the curriculum had been distributed to. And while the results are still being processed as well as collected, we hope to receive those in the near future. And such wraps up our conclusion. My sincerest apologies. The impact that we had, apologies for that one. The impact of our actual research project had been that the learners have an introduction to the facets of a restorative approach worldview and the alternative means of conflict resolution. Restorative approach is a voluntary and alternative approach to the traditional means of conflict resolution, which include at its most extreme civil litigation. The future direction of the program is so that future learners will be able to respond and guide training opportunities to use a restorative approach in healthcare contexts, as well as to further adapt the program with the results garnered. And the aim of the curriculum is to provide a basis for lifelong learning and confidence in approaching harm in healthcare with a new novel approach. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you all so much for listening. We are eagerly awaiting each of your insights as to how it is that we can improve. But thank you.
Thank you to your entire group. That was a very clean presentation. Very well done. Okay, let's go
Appreciate that
through.
immensely.
How was the time, Natasha, when you timed the presentation?
A little bit over. We were at 3 minutes, 50 seconds. So there was a little bit, I'm sure, there was a little bit of around the last slide that would save some time next time around, but still need to tweak it a little bit more to get it within that 3 minutes.
Most certainly. Thank you for the timing. I believe that's the first time we've actually not only presented all the way through, but also timed the presentation. So that's wonderful insight that we can then use to adapt our speaking points and hopefully communicate as much information, but also a lot of what our research had been is to create and illustrate a larger picture so as to foster interest in excitement in the program as well in developing that alternative approach. So to communicate that information effectively whilst also creating and illustrating a vision for the future of healthcare that we have. I think that's the main objectives of our presentation, that with which we hope to achieve.
Great job. And we do have, just a note, 3 students in this group, so that makes it harder to transition as well. Great job. Okay, going through the introductory slide. Everyone, let's take a look at this and see how we can improve this slide, this clean, beautiful slide.
Yeah, so I from this slide, I'd say I think the images were great. The only thing I wanted to comment was that I think the use of like 3 like the use of having like black on white for the introduction, then having red for the objective. And I think there's also a different slide down where the font is black like later on. So I think there's a little bit of inconsistency. I'm not sure using like 3 colors like that is the best choice.
There is inconsistency, and I appreciate that immensely. Thank you for demonstrating that was evident. I suppose that was a formatting error with the transition, but thank you for that. I appreciate it immensely. And that's something we can immediately change.
And I'm not sure if the font is, I think just the heading, introduction and objective, I think it's nice if it's the same font. I think in the next slide, you can see it's a little bit different as well. Like methods, that looks almost like a Times New Roman-y kind of font. And whereas the text in the slide is, I don't know what that is, Calibri or something, but I don't know. Maybe that's a personal preference kind of thing if you like to have the fonts the same.
I think it was the slide template that had the title different and the text different, but we'll make sure that it's all consistent throughout for each of the slides for sure. Thank you for noticing that.
For that first slide, is there any way we can move the words up? So instead of application being on its own, it flows in a nicer chunk?
Absolutely. Apologies. I'm having a little bit of trouble with my Zoom. So whenever I click on the actual slide, I can't see you all. So apologies if
Oh,
I'm just
yeah.
That's okay.
looking to the random. But sorry, Megan, you were speaking to what was it that you were
Like
moving
right
the
after application, if we can have like at least in addressing fit right beside it, it'll flow nicer.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
I had tried to fix that beforehand, but it wasn't cooperating with me. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, even that looks more balanced like that. One question I had, just in terms of content, addressing healthcare harm for all parties involved. I find the term like all parties to be pretty general. It could be anybody. Like, would it be it might be helpful just to say, like, who are those parties? Is it patients? Is it providers?
In the beginning of the introduction, I believe that at the very beginning, I referred to all parties as patients, families, and providers alike. And then from there on, I referred to it as all parties, but I think it definitely would, it would provide further clarification if I noted saying from here on, we'll refer to patients, providers, and families as all parties.
Sure.
And if I may, I think honestly it might benefit from just elaborating after the involved. So perhaps all parties, agents, actors involved with the adverse event, because in all honesty, the restorative approach does involve those whom are involved, all disciplines, all backgrounds, all professions. The harm incurred compounds, and so the particular healthcare harm that had happened. The physician receives harm in the embarrassment, in the ridicule of the complaints process, or in its most extreme case, civil litigation. The patient receives the physical harm, but also the harm incurred from being displaced in the workforce, as well as the financial harm that is involved. And then so whomever is involved with the party, the program itself speaks to how it is that we can use a restorative approach to evaluate the needs of each individual and recognize them as human beings. And so that concept of fluidity of need. So I'm not sure, and I agree that it's a little vague as is, but perhaps rather than change to all parties, we may specify involved with that particular healthcare or adverse event. But parties could be changed to actors or agents as well, yeah.
Can it not be stakeholders?
Stakeholders, absolutely. Wonderful insight, Colin. Stakeholders, absolutely, just because they have a place in the program or in the event. Let me take down some notes. Apologies.
Okay, for the sake of time, let's jump into that second slide as well. After you're done jotting down your notes there.
Oh, yes.
No worries.
Thank you. All right. How does that look? Can you also see that?
Yes, perfect.
Let's find out what that font is, hey? So yeah, it looks like we're using Railway in this particular one, Merriweather in the title, and then going back to the first slide, it looks like it was Merriweather and then Arial. So there is an inconsistency, absolutely. Oh, well, actually, apologies. It looks like it's like Railway for the section title, and then Arial for the actual like content of the subdiscipline.
Any comments about the methods page?
Yeah, absolutely.
How did this page look to everyone? Was it clear? It looks consistent. There's no period on one sentence and not the next. That's great. Okay,
Which I
let's jump into
completely
the
agree.
next one.
That's oh, perfect. All right, results. We're very interested to hear some feedback on this particular page. We're trying to figure out, especially as now the results will be statistically analyzed as well as for significances and then also concluded by this Friday. But we are curious, just because it was in progress, how best to present, whether that was to compile all the results into a table or if it would be appropriate to have particular screen share or screenshots, excuse me, of the Qualtrics as we have presented today. So any feedback on that would be much appreciated. Any insights?
I think anytime you have results that are like in a table format, you have to make sure that the part that you want to stand out actually stands out. So if you have results with like standard deviation, it looks like, if there is a way to graphically show that either from your Qualtrics data or even graphing your table data, that would be great. If not, if you want to point to something and draw their attention to a specific part on the table, that would work as well. But for them to look at a picture like this, no one's going to pay attention to your table part, and they're just going to read that first part and see in progress stand out and 3 stand out.
Very, very, yeah, absolutely. Without the context behind in progress and 3, it seems a little bit odd, I suppose, for want of a better word. Yeah, thank you for that, Megan. Any other insights, my friends? Maddie, yeah.
Yeah, once we have our final data collected, we will definitely format it and organize it so that the results are clear and point to what we would like the audience to get across from looking at this slide.
Okay, for the sake of time, let's jump to that last slide and then we'll jump into the next groups.
Oh, sorry, I just had one comment about the previous slide, number 3. Just the wording of 3 sample cohorts have been designed from the various health authorities. So that wording's a little unusual. So do you mean recruited? Like, are you talking about the cohort? Having,
yeah,
it being the people that you've gathered the data from, because then it would be the cohorts having been recruited from the sites.
It wasn't so much as a recruitment, just as it was published and then they were allowed to sign up as they were interested. The research is a little bit different as it's a curriculum. So it was more so we've published this curriculum, this pilot curriculum, they're more than able to access it. And so those whom signed up for it were in particular or pertain to particular health authorities across BC. But I can absolutely see the word design being a little bit odd,
maybe just revisit the wording of that sentence so that it reflects what took place. Because you don't generally design, I mean, you design a study or you design a methodology, but you don't necessarily design a cohort. So
sorry, I just stopped screen. Absolutely, thank you for that. Intentionality with wording is critical to the program, but also to the presentation as well. So thank you. All right, then, and I suppose conclusions.
I don't think you need page numbers, Dylan, because especially since slide 4 is slide 5.
Apologies, that was also because we may or may not have been scrambling up until the last minute with in all transparency and in all honesty with courses and course schedules. But right on that, Colin, I'll especially as number 1 is not number 2, and yeah, for consistency, we'll take those ones out.
Yeah, I think they're just distracting.
Definitely.
Thank you, group. I think we'll jump into the next presenters. The more you practice this, I'm sure it'll be a great presentation in the end. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much, my friends.
Maddie as well. Okay, next up we have Paige, Riki, and Denise. We have Dr. Malani and Dr. Chow students. This is poster number 3 for those wondering that are doing the evaluations.
Well, I pulled it up for screen sharing. I just want to apologize, but the presentation is not perfect today. I am recovering from a concussion and I've been working on this alone, so I've kind of been a little pressed for time. Just give me one moment to screen share. One moment, the bar on the top is in the way. There we are. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes, great, thank you.
My apologies, there's something in the middle of my screen that I'm just trying to get rid of. There we go. No, it's on the wrong slide. I'm so sorry. There we go. Okay, now I'm ready to start. Okay, so today we'll be talking about a project that investigates how the locally engineered personal belongings carrier can be used to improve the quality of life for vulnerable communities. Specifically, we will be focusing on the communities of those with lived experience of homelessness and natural disaster evacuees. This project works to receive feedback on the PBC prototype design so we can engineer a more desirable model. The personal belongings carrier was first engineered in 2018 by a group of UBC engineering students. It is important to note that homelessness spreads far beyond the issue of lack of housing. Homeless individuals are often forced to face additional barriers such as stigmatization, criminalization, and an inability to secure their belongings. Homeless individuals spend excessive amounts of time protecting their belongings, and this can often prevent them from accessing services that are vital for their emotional, mental, and physical health. Additionally, natural disaster evacuees have issues when securing their belongings within a shelter environment. So this is a human-centered qualitative design, and it can be separated into two main components: prototype design and data collection. The cart, which you can see here on the right, has many features, including a lockable safe, a USB solar panel, an internal power bank, a GPS system, GEO fencing, and 0.5 meters cubed of internal storage. The dimensions are similar to that of a standard shopping cart, and the empty weight is 55 pounds, which means it is easily maneuverable. During data collection, interviews and consultation meetings were conducted with both Kelowna City staff and community members. Participants were allowed to test out the cart on the streets of Kelowna, give feedback on the cart design, and share stories regarding the cart's usefulness. A literature review was also conducted to determine if PBC-like devices have been used in the past during disaster evacuations. Based on the data we have collected so far, it was determined that the PBC would be beneficial for the homeless community, but only if certain alterations were made. Many participants suggest that those who are unable or unwilling to access shelters would benefit most from the PBC device. In order to target this community specifically, it was recommended that we add shelter-like extensions, such as a pull-out canvas tarp or an extendable chair. It was also recommended that we increase weather durability by making more versatile casters, sealable doors, and adding splash guards. Additionally, it was requested that we increase options for personalization and remove the GPS system so it feels more personable. The literature review showed no evidence of previous PBC-like devices being used, but we were able to find some areas where its use would be beneficial. For example, during organized evacuation processes and with maintaining and securing belongings within the shelter environment. So just to conclude, it was found that both homeless individuals and natural disaster evacuees would benefit from the use of a PBC device, but only if it was designed with the target community in mind. Before the implementation of this device, it is recommended that we add shelter-like components such as a canvas tarp and work to optimize personability. In the coming months, we plan to continue data collection in downtown Kelowna and finalize the literature review. After sufficient data has been collected, a team of engineers will develop a prototype that best fits the target communities based on the feedback we have received. After the prototype is complete, we plan to create a plan to distribute the PBC throughout Kelowna, as well as the possibility of distributing it within other cities in Canada. Thank you for listening, and let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, great job, Paige. I hope you feel better soon. Let's go on that first slide. How are we for time on this one, Natasha?
Really close. So we were at 3 minutes, 25 seconds. So just probably the things we talk about today will shorten it a bit.
Yeah, I know I stumbled quite a few times as well. So just a little bit anxious with presenting, that led to some stumbling, which I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't catch that, so don't worry. Your presentation was great.
Okay, I'm gonna do that again.
I would actually like to see your carrier right on the first page, because I kept thinking, like, what is this? I want to see this carrier. And so I know you have the picture of your carrier on the second page, but I'd love to see it here. Maybe you have it also on the second page as well, almost like a logo. I don't know if anyone agrees or disagrees with me, but I was so curious about what this carrier actually was, and I think it would draw people into your presentation. And another thing that I would suggest is even just starting out with like an impact statement, like around homelessness. So before jumping into what you're investigating, just say something right off the start about the homelessness that's happening in Kelowna and the impact that has, and then go into, we developed this personal carrier for these reasons.
Okay, would it be possible that I can move this statement about like the issues that the homeless individuals face and the time protecting their belongings to the beginning? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, so that you start out with your kind of problem specification and rationale up front, and then move into what you were doing to address it.
That sounds great. Thank you.
I would also just suggest on this slide too, these are full sentences. So just to reduce them down to more of a bullet point.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's a lot to read for the audience. And you do a really nice job of just explaining it all. So if the audience could just follow along with some like bullet points, then that's more effective than the full sentences here.
Okay.
And I like the idea of having the personal carrier, having a picture of that right up front as well. That could really add to this first slide.
Perfect. I will try to do that after this meeting. Any other things on this slide?
No, I think you're okay, Paige. You can go ahead to the second page. If you reduce your bullet size and have that attention grabbing picture, you'll be great on the first page.
Okay, perfect. I'm assuming I'm supposed to reduce the full sentences on this slide as well.
I would suggest that as well, Paige. I think you're such a great storyteller that if you shorten your bullet points, people can read those and then follow your thoughts with the storytelling.
Okay.
There's something a little bit crowded about the spacing. So you might want to just revisit the line spacing of the sentences.
Okay.
I mean, that might be solved by the bullet points, but just it looks like it's kind of pushed together quite a bit, the lines, the line spacing. And just another suggestion is this font that you've got here is a serif font. So it's got the curly cues under some of the letters, and for readability, it's more, found to be more readable to use a nonce or sans serif. So like an Arial or Calibri or something like that.
Okay.
The ones that don't have the curly cues.
Okay, that makes sense.
Go ahead, Paige. You can go to the next slide.
I think the slide looks really good. I'm just curious, like the requested changes were they from the homeless population, members of the homeless population that provided some of the suggestions, or where did those come from? You might get that question.
So to date, we have had 2 community consultation meetings that occurred on campus, and it contained a total of 4 city community staff. So people that worked with homelessness and the gospel mission that were in charge of homelessness housing. We tried to get bylaw involved as well for them to give some feedback. And we also brought in some members from an organization called LICO, which is people with lived experience of homelessness. So this was a combination of both. And they both gave very similar feedback as well.
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
that would
that's
be
really
important to
interesting.
mention, right? Important to
Okay.
mention.
Yeah,
say-
if you can weave that in even as you're talking,
Okay.
or even to say like, you know, the requested changes from the from consultation sessions, and then you can always just, you don't have to write it all out, but you can say,
Yeah.
from
I think I mentioned
city
here
staff
both.
and people with lived experience. Oh, you've got that there. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which I could probably highlight more if I get rid of the paragraphs.
Yeah.
And then just to the last slide, which I know is very text heavy as well, I recognize now.
Yeah, I think 2 to 3 key takeaways. And once again, you're really well spoken. So 2 short main conclusions and future works would be great.
Wonderful. And I'm hoping that my partner will present with me at the final as well. So there might be a little bit of a change there.
Wonderful. No worries. Okay, we will jump into the next group. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
Okay, our next group is Vanessa and Jay, Dr. Milani and Dr. Hassan students. They were unable to make it, so they pre-recorded their video, and I will share it on my end, and then we will also provide them with feedback, hoping that they will rewatch this recording after our workshop. Going to share my screen. Okay, everyone can see my screen? Perfect, let's start.
Hi everyone, our team project is working on developing and designing a mixed reality guidance tool for healthcare training, with our end users being medical and nursing students. So just a little bit about the current state of skills training right now in the midst of the pandemic. So due to the pandemic, students in healthcare are finding it really difficult to learn the theoretical aspect of clinical skills online through 2D simulations and just a bunch of written material. And there are really strict time limitations in physical labs right now. So it's also really difficult to learn the practical aspect of clinical skills. And on top of that, there is a global scarcity of medical supplies, as the priority for manufacturers are hospitals at this point. So we decided to develop a mixed reality training platform to help students enhance the quality of training. Okay, and so the objectives of our study is to develop a mixed reality platform where physical lab time, medical supplies, and the instructor's presence is not necessarily required. And the second objective is to determine the effectiveness of this platform as a supplemental tool to physical lab time.
Hi, I'm Jay, and I will be going over what we currently have as what we have developed as a prototype. So in here, you're seeing the IP bag training video. You do see an audio mode, text mode. There are multiple modes where a user can select a different type of things. There's agent mode and human mode. One is being automatically progressing, and one is assuming that there is an instructor or a trainer currently watching over the internet. So there are instructions that can be seen or be heard, depends on the mode that you have selected, and the students will be able to repeat the same type of challenge until one perfects the craft.
Okay, so our anticipated user feedback. So we anticipate that the users will find that the training platform is a good solution as a supplemental guidance tool to help really consolidate the learned skills. The auditory and text options will cater to different types of learners. And what's really great about it is that it is repeatable as many times as they want to help aid in their learning. So future work. So we will interview students to understand improvements to be made with their current training modalities. And we will collect more user feedback to really better understand the efficacy of the platform that we created. And lastly, we will publish findings in an academic journal to really guide mixed reality training development in this field. So our platform basically aims to enhance the quality of a student's training experience for lab and really help enable educators to make the shift to implement disruptive technologies such as mixed reality in healthcare skills training. The platform can be used as a great supplemental guidance tool to physical lab training. And we believe that it is a promising solution to bridge the gap between practice and theoretical knowledge in healthcare training. And yeah, that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening. Do you guys have any questions or suggestions?
Okay. Maybe I will just go stop on their pages so we can discuss them accordingly. This seems to be their first slide. Any comments for our group? Vanessa and Jay?
One thing that I noticed is if they're presenting at the UBCO conference, they had very strict rules with their slides, that there was like no animations or movement. So I don't know if they would like the video very much. I don't know if this necessarily fit into the 4 slides. I lost count, but that might be something to pay attention to.
Perfect. I also noticed that there is some sort of a writing. I'm not sure if that's your title in the bottom, but I only see half of it. So I think something, either your text that you've blurred the background of, it doesn't make that visible. The picture is clear, heading is clear, everything seems consistent here. Are we okay if I go to the second slide? Okay. Next up.
Priority for manufacturers are hard.
Okay, then we went into the objective slide. It was clear, nicely bolded. Anything anyone wants to add about this particular slide? Okay.
I guess I just add that you do have quite a bit of white space on that slide, so you could put in a little graphic or picture just to liven it up a little.
What's next? The video. Okay, so we'll have to look and see if this is allowed at the conference or not. Any comments with regards to this slide? Okay. And future work.
Yeah, again, I just thought suggest adding a graphic or a picture just to make it a little more interesting.
I agree with that. And perhaps you could actually highlight interview students instead of just students. See if there's any other slides after this. Oh, there was a conclusion slide as well. How are we for time on this one? 3 minutes? We're under, so you're good on time for this one. Okay, that was it. Thank you, Vanessa and Jay. Hopefully you can take the feedback from everyone and apply it afterwards. Next group, we have Emily and Ashish.
Hey everyone.
This is toaster number 6 for our evaluators.
Sorry, I'm just getting the PowerPoint open real quick.
Can we start?
Go ahead, yes.
I'm Ashish Giri, Bachelor of Applied Science Mechanical Engineering student, secondary student.
And I'm Emily. I'm in my 4th year of my Bachelor of Science, majoring in psychology.
Today, we are going to present about our research project requirement specification for a makerspace for rural communities in British Columbia. To start off, as defined by Oxford Dictionary, makerspace is a place in which people are with sharing interests, especially in computing or technology, can gather together to work on a project while sharing ideas. Till now, the idea of makerspace has been mostly urban-centric. So we aim to create a mobile makerspace that will help to improve the health of rural communities in BC while bridging the gap between the technology and health in cities and villages. To understand what we need to outfit a makerspace, we use processes established for requirement specification, which involve a conversation with stakeholders, and environmental scan of existing makerspace to understand what are relevant and more important for rural settings. Can you go to the next slide? So the goal of our project is to understand how existing makerspaces in cities and rural communities in British Columbia have been developed, and to understand provider experience in running and maintaining a makerspace. We aim to examine how existing makerspace determine resources that are needed and match these anticipated capacities of target users. To gain insight into how makerspace users determine what counts as innovation is also one of our goals. We're trying to see the extent of which health and wellness projects have been targeted in existing makerspace. Given how difficult it has been for us to find health-related makerspace, it is safe to say that there are not a lot of health makerspaces, specifically in this time. You can go to methods now.
Yeah, so as Ashish was saying, our overall goal is as a foundation to understand the requirements for the appropriate equipping of a makerspace. Originally, this was going to be done through conducting a multiple case study of 3 existing makerspaces that currently serve small cities and rural communities in BC, but those proved hard to find. So we have kind of widened our lens to look at not only community makerspaces, but also those in schools and libraries. So within these case studies, we are conducting interviews with key stakeholders, focus groups of current makerspace users, and also examining supporting documents which relate to the planning, implementation, and evaluation of these spaces. Yeah, so right now we are at the stage where we're just finishing up our literature review and also scheduling interviews. The nature of research has kind of been all over the place for us, but upon completion of our study, we hope to acquire the necessary knowledge to actually build an inclusive makerspace. And then the goal of this makerspace in the end is to improve access, broaden participation, support diversity, and act as an equalizer to foster innovation. And that is the end.
Great job, guys. Let's head to that first slide and get some feedback from everyone. That was a nice and visual first slide, you guys. Very colorful.
Close for timing, titch over 10 seconds. So it's just a matter of cutting out a couple words and you're good to go. Beautiful slides.
Thank you. I think I could definitely cut down a couple seconds with practice. Shall I move on to the next
bit as well.
Oh, just one thing on this one. Are you guys because the all caps on the bottom, are you trying to differentiate between your bottom like requirements, specifications, and then the top scan of existing? Is that like your main heading? That's why you're capitalizing all the letters in the literature review, for example?
Yeah, this kind of falls underneath like the requirement specification.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Let's move on to the next one. Very clear. Let's just make sure they're all consistent. Perfect. Anyone wants to make a comment about visualization? Y'all thought it was perfect?
I really like the way that the slides look, and they're all very easy to understand and easy to comprehend. Like it's not too much to look at. It's not overwhelming, but it's still visually appealing.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead. Next slide. Who are you interviewing in your individual interviews?
So the individual interviews will be like stakeholders in that are involved in makerspaces, and then also just individual users who use it in their day-to-day life as well. Would you maybe suggest making that a little bit clearer in the presentation?
I think so. I think you have some room in this one because everything is so concise in all the other slides that if you want to expand a little bit, you could. Even if like you don't want to add a bullet and just in a bracket mention who your groups are, or if you're holding focus groups, how many focus groups are you holding? Just some extra takeaways.
Yeah, okay.
And you might not even have to, because it's so tight for time, even if it's on there, people are listening to you, they can look at your slides and get the information that way.
Right.
Thanks, Ashish. No worries. I see that you have to run. Go ahead. You can go to the next slide, Emily. Was there one more slide after this one, Emily, or was this the final?
No, this is final.
Okay. What is everyone's suggestion on this one? Because I know you talked about it verbally of what the direction is. Did everyone catch it? So if I went around and asked, what is Emily and Ashish's conclusion and future direction? Do you guys remember?
Probably not, I would think. Maybe we could just add like a couple small bullet points just with the overall goals, like broaden participation, diversity. Okay.
Okay, that was wonderful and very clean.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
I'll stop sharing here. Thank you.
Perfect. Next up, we have Nadine and Elizabeth, Dr. Krutner and Dr. Commissar students.
Hello, let me just share my screen.
This is poster number 7 for evaluators.
Are we ready? Okay. Our research is about using artificial intelligence to assess performance of fine motor and upper limb skills in health and disease. So our research is centered around stroke recovery and testing a machine learning software that would allow for remote tracking and recovery of stroke patients. Our research involved Dr. Krutner and Dr. Commissar, as well as both Nadine and I, and then 2 other people that work in the lab, Samia and Perry's. For the introduction, stroke recovery requires long-term interventions that is best achieved through home-based recovery programs. However, currently tracking and promoting motor recovery requires bulky and expensive and lab-based equipment that isn't accessible to everybody around the world. Deep Lab Cut is a machine learning software that can perform markerless motion captures and would allow for remote tracking of motor recovery for stroke patients. Our study aims to quantify this human-based error and understand ways to correct it. We examine the accuracy of DLC's manual tagging and tracking hand movements. We hypothesize that manual tagging with DLC will accurately capture the position data of a participant hand movement compared to the touchscreen-based tracker of position data. So our methods included recording participants' hand movement during a tracing session with a consumer-grade camera, which was our GoPro, and its screen trajectories. Then we manually tag the participants' movements using the Deep Lab Cut software. Next, we obtain the X and Y coordinates of the participants' hand movements based on the tags. And finally, we compared these coordinates to the Deep Lab Cut trajectories and the touchscreen ones. Next, I will share, I'll hand it over to Nadine to share the results.
Yeah, so what we see over here are the brighter colors in the graph sort of show the progression of the movement. So as you can see, the participant is starting off their movement on the lighter line, and then as it gets darker, that's sort of where the participant sort of stops moving, and that's where their movement sort of stops. So as you can see, we can see a similar pattern where the participants sort of end their movement around the cluster, and the differences in the exact coordinates actually attributed to the camera angle. Now, this study tells us, moving on to the next slide, this study sort of tells us that we can track human movement with deep lab cuts. And this acts as an initial evidence in the concept of markerless capture system that has important implications in at-home rehab. It was challenging to replicate the same amount of points as our touchscreen trajectories. It was essential to note that this was only the initial human tagging. So we are currently working on testing the DLC using a supercomputer to obtain more accurate data point in the DLC's trajectories, and to create a more fluid motion that we can see within the screen trajectories. In conclusion, our study lays a solid groundwork for future validation studies that explores markerless motion system with consumer grade equipment. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, let's head to slide number 1. Everyone, please voice your opinions. We want to hear from you. We just want to help each other so we can make these the best they can possibly be. We want to see you guys win some awards at these conferences. Past MURPH scholars have always won at least 1 or 2 in the categories in the previous year. So we hope that one of you can also be successful. Okay.
I just wanted to say I loved your guys' presentation. You both sounded very confident in the material and found like a perfect balance between like science talk and stuff that people from other disciplines could understand. So I thought it was beautifully spoken.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you. Okay, let's head to the second slide after this. Any thoughts on this first slide?
Be just trying to get down to 2 or 3 bullet points. There's quite a lot of writing on this slide, so don't be afraid to have people listen to you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on the slide. So maybe you just have, I guess your opening statement could be like why it's important to, why stroke recovery is important, why we need these long-term interventions, talk about the software, and then sort of your aim. And then you don't necessarily have to have the hypothesis on the slide per se, but you can just mention it just to try and reduce the amount of words on the slide.
Yeah, of course. I also noticed that we're missing a period on our first bullet point, so I'll make sure to add that in after.
How was the time on this, Natasha? Oh, we can't hear you.
I had forgot to press stop, but I do know that it was a little bit over. So you may want to time it again and cut.
Yeah, so it's great to see that you're starting off with stroke, your main problem, that the recovery is the main issue that you're trying to tackle, and that you have this software that is tracking everything. So if you go to back to that first slide.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
That's okay, that's okay.
Okay, let me just exit it. There we go. Can you guys still see it?
Yes, that's perfect. So what I was thinking is when you're giving your introduction bullet points, maybe you can give a space and then state your aim, because your last bullet point is your study aim. So if you wanted to keep your hypothesis on there as well, you could make your aim stand out a little bit more. So give it a space. It could be a whole new section, just exactly how you have your hypothesis. Doesn't have to be a bullet, and you don't have to state our study aims. You can say aim equals even, and then just state your aim, or aim colon and state a brief aim of what your study's aims are. And same with hypothesis. Try to shorten it. If you want to include it, that's okay. But try also, if you're going to put your aim, that your hypothesis and aim, if you're going to bold your hypothesis, that your aim is also bolded as well, so it matches. Those are the main takeaways, and everyone's quickly going to look at your aim and see what your project is all about. So that was great for the first one. Let's go to that.
I also
second.
just quickly, I want to mention, because you have an extended methods. I think it's good that I think it is, maybe you can consider this because this is an interesting thing. Like the software itself, it's not something that you need to emphasize a lot. And I mean, the use of artificial intelligence is important, but it's saying we are using this specific software on the introduction. Maybe that doesn't matter. Really, your approach, general approach would be, or the problem itself would be, it's better to highlight that one. The details that what software we are using or the accuracy of the software, no, like more emphasize on the impact on of your study, and also maybe the novel approach that you're using, more kind of using artificial intelligence.
So just to disregard like the software's name.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe you should consider, because you also have methods. Maybe I'm using this software. I could be wrong, but I don't know what Negin and Natasha think, but I think probably that could be the case. Maybe highlighting that aspect rather than the details of the software and the introduction. Maybe methods. Yeah, obviously we're using this software for like to bring AI into this analysis, but really on the introduction, maybe not. Just AI itself would be interesting to highlight.
Yeah, no. That was a really good point. I just wanted to say that so our whole study sort of depends on this program. So we're using this program specifically to create a model for us to sort of push into the supercomputer, and that's sort of where the artificial intelligence comes in. So here we're trying to set the error of whether or not the program itself can even accurately trace our movement before pushing it in the program. So maybe that's like something we have to clarify, but that was a really good point. Thank you.
Okay, no, if you better, Java, just come. I understand your point.
Yeah, no, I think we could have clarified that better.
Let's look at your methods slide.
I wonder if here, like, do you have the opportunity to put an actual picture to help with the sort of the explanation?
I'm sure that we could, yeah, like of a picture of like the screen, like the iPad screen that the participants are tracing.
Maybe, yeah, like the whole setup.
Oh, the whole setup. Okay, yeah, I'm sure we could figure that out. That's actually really good feedback because it's kind of confusing. I think it's kind of a confusing study for people that aren't like actively in it. So that like pictures are more than words, right? So I think it would help explain it.
Yeah, I think you will start losing people around like bullet number 3 and 4 of what X and Y coordinates you're comparing. So try to make it as clear as you can.
If you can, just as suggest, if you can change this to a flowchart format, if there is a way you can put some representative image for each step, and just with a very short like description, or maybe just flowchart with short descriptions. I think because there is a flow here, you're talking about your steps. Yeah, I think probably it's better to change it to a flowchart. That's my suggestion. then it adds some visuality plus the image that you're also going to add into this.
Okay, let's go to your results. It's the first group that I saw some graphs on here. You have to make sure we label your figures, you guys. On the X and Y axis, someone will always say, what does the X stand for? What is the Y? And for the time, like, is it second? Is it minutes? Is it hours?
Just a quick question. For the X and Y, do you just want us to put like X coordinates, because that's like literally the X and Y coordinates? So maybe like putting in coordinates would be more helpful.
Maybe even, yeah, explaining like the X and Y are the coordinates of the hand movement, just a small bullet, because they might have missed it on the last slide. So then when they look at this and just see X and Y, they'll be like, what is X and Y? Units, Spencer said, if there's units, yes. Any other comments on the results section? Okay, let's move to that last slide of discussion and conclusion. Okay, here I did notice like the first two bullets seem to be bolded, and then your conclusion, some parts seem to be bolded. I know it's hard to tell with the white lettering.
We actually purposely did that just to make words stand out, but I see that it kind of looks like, I don't know,
okay
like
if
it doesn't
you-
look as smooth. Like
I
just
know
the whole two bullets are bolded.
That's okay if you bold some sections to make them stand out, but then try to mirror it for discussion. So then it's cohesive in the one slide.
Maybe a little bit larger font here. You know what
Period
size
on
it
that
is?
first bullet.
It's 12. Yeah, 12. It's 12 throughout the whole presentation other than the titles. So.
Just a period on that first bullet under the conclusion. And when you're explaining it, just really try to give that one last message of why this study matters, like your significance of like the conclusion and how important it is for stroke patients and their recovery. That was great. Any other final comments for our group? After this, we have two more. Okay. Thank you, Nadine and Elizabeth. Perfect. Okay, next up, we have Ojo and Spencer, Dr. Bergstrom and Dr. Zandberg students.
Hi there. Hope you all can hear me okay.
Yes, Spencer. Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
Poster number 8 for our evaluators.
All right.
So our project was differentiation of colon organoids into MUC2 type secretory cells. I'm Spencer Ursel. I'm from the science faculty, and I'll introduce you to OJ here.
Yeah, I'm OJ Amadou. I'm from the School of Engineering. I'd like to start by acknowledging that this work wouldn't be possible if not for the work of graduate student Rain Inaba and honor student Sydney Bassetti. So what are we doing? The purpose of this research is to create an organoid system capable of releasing MUC2, a glycoprotein present in the gut. Why? Well, the reason it is important to create a system for MUC2 release is because MUC2 could be used to treat inflammatory bowel disease and colon cancer.
All right, so how we did this was we treated organoids with two types of inhibitors. The first inhibitor was DAPT, and the second inhibitor was IWR endo. What those do is they inhibit biological pathways, and it causes the organoids to differentiate into these secretory cells that are capable of producing this mucus. We can show you the results here. So as you can see, indicated by the red, we found that differentiation was possible. It was most abundant when proximal organoids obtained from the colon were treated with DAPT as opposed to WIR endo. And we found that differentiation was not possible in distal organoids. And yeah, that was basically the extent of our project.
Yeah, so the conclusion was that successful MUC2 differentiation, and we did this through the supplementation of DAPT to primary culture medium and proximal organoids. In the future, the future work in this will be aimed at analysis of MUC and development of a collection system.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Natasha, how are we for time on this one?
They have some time. So there are some things that I think would help the understanding. I live and breathe this stuff, so, and I think Megan does too, so we understand it, but
yeah, it was quite difficult to try and create a presentation that was suitable for the general audience as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
that's okay.
Yeah, so what I would start with is just even what an organoid is. And on that first slide, like you introduce yourself and hey everyone, like there's these cool organoids and this is what they can do. It's kind of the new and up and coming thing in the research world. So a picture of them, even if you don't have, I'm sure Dr. Bergstrom has one. So you could just grab a beautiful picture of an organoid and start right here and just explain what they are and why they're relevant to us as human beings. And then you could go into, we use these organoids because we want to look at this specific mucin. And mucin is just the mucus in our gut. And you could even have a picture of your digestive tract and showing the mucus layer and why that's important. And that we use these to treat IBD and cancer and then go into your work. And I think that would help us understand what happened because you did a great job of explaining what you added to the different cells and things like that. So those are some of the comments I have.
Perfect, thank you.
I agree. I think if you even just started your story with mucus, because you know that we can use the slimy features that are most often overlooked in your gut, and we can use it to treat IBD and cancer. And how are you going to do that? Then you can explain your organoid system. Then you jump into MUC2, and you said glycoproteins, or people are going to miss what that is. Maybe you can mention that there's all these sugar molecules that are in our mucus systems. We're going to use the organoid system to treat these guys. And that'll be more attention grabbing. Once they see the intestines and the mucus, it'll stimulate some thought.
I think that's a great idea. It's going to be interesting trying to communicate it all in an effective way, but I think it is possible to do.
I know it's a tough project.
Yeah, because it's almost like a mini lesson on glycobiology and all this stuff. And then also on top of that, trying to communicate what we actually did is, yeah.
Exactly.
But definitely, yeah, thank you.
And even like when you mentioned prox and dis, like mentioning like if you want to get into depth of what those are, you can, but just mentioning that you're using the different parts of the colon, because no one's gonna know like that
Exactly, yeah.
proximal or distal.
It says it in the figure caption, but that is also, yeah.
Yeah, try to keep it more
Definitely.
general. Pretend you're doing it for someone that's outside of your scope, not having like that many, I see like acronyms that you have. Everyone's gonna lose what those are.
Yeah, it could just be a good yeah, I think it's possible for sure to make it more general rather than trying to communicate the ins and outs of our research.
I agree. Instead of a plate design, I really agree with Natasha, just including an intestinal tract and focusing on a mucus picture. That's way more exciting.
You're right
Then you
about
don't
that.
have to get into acronyms and procs and this, and you won't miss the audience members. Okay, let's go to that second slide. First slide, I think you can make it good and make the story attention grabbing. Let's see results. Okay, differentiation into goblet cells. So everyone's gonna be like, what are goblet cells? So make sure when you're explaining it, touch points on what those are. Let's see these images. So for your images, most people won't read your figure caption. Your figure caption is very lengthy. Try to make it a short sentence. If an imaging, like fluorescent imaging technique was used, you can say what type of microscopy you used and what you were comparing. Like if you were looking at it along the colon or whatever it was, just a short sentence of what it is. And a main takeaway message of what this result showed. So this says no differentiation in the distal organoids. Okay. Yeah, like even that middle point, most abundant when proximal ones are treated with DAPT, people will miss what DAPT is. So what was the thing that made them more abundant?
Right,
when
we
you're
just say
explaining
inhibitors.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, in the images point them out. Like we saw, if you look in this image right here on top right, you'll see that it's more abundant. You know, just make their eyes go to where you want them to look.
Right. Okay.
Any other tips? Sorry, I went on a long tangent there. I love the gut stuff.
No worries. Yeah, I know. I can tell.
Okay. Any other things if we move to the last slide? Let's go to that last slide. Okay, successful two differentiation. Okay, besides the conclusions that you're finding in your study, I think one big takeaway message of like the future direction of your study will bring it back to the intro again. And they'll realize, okay, they did some methods and results. What's the significance and implications of these results? So make them go back to thinking what this research can even be applicable for. Like maybe in the future, this can be used again to treat IBD and cancer. Make it go
Yeah,
big,
I think
broad,
that's probably the best way to do it. Just because it's something that more people can relate to and has more significant impacts than a collection system.
Good job, guys, because it is a very complex area to understand, and you've had to learn this in a very short period of time. I'm going on 5 years, so.
Luckily, I'm from the science background, so I had a little bit of a head start, but OJ definitely, like, shout out to him. He did a great job of learning it all.
Amazing job. Okay, thank you. You were our second to last group. Our last group is Paige and Rebecca. Thank you, Spencer. No joke. Paige and Rebecca couldn't make it, so we're going to have another video for our last presentation, and then I'll try to go through the slides again, and we can give them some feedback that they can look back at this recording and hopefully apply to theirs. This was poster number 10 for the evaluators. I'm going to share my screen. Pull up the second video first. Okay. Let's go.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Anderson, and I'll be presenting the introduction and method sections.
My name is Paige Foe, and I will be presenting the results and the implication section.
It has been shown that physical activity benefits the social, physical, and psychological development of children with neurodevelopmental disorders, Further, it benefits social inclusion and quality of life for children with autism spectrum disorder specifically. This project is part of an overall project that's creating a website to help promote safe and active recreation for families of children with autism spectrum disorder. However, this presentation will focus specifically on swimming and water activities. It is known that there are several risks and barriers associated with water for children with autism spectrum disorder. However, it's difficult to find information regarding these barriers and knowledge on how to address them. So this webpage will aim to encourage water-based recreation to address these risks and benefits of water and suggest prevention strategies. To do this, a literature review was completed using peer-reviewed journal articles and reputable gray literature to compile all of this information together and create a website page on swimming and water safety for children with autism spectrum disorder. Articles were found through the PsycInfo database using keywords such as water safety, autism spectrum disorder, and swimming. This project is also funded by a SURE grant and the MURPH program at UBCO.
So our initial results reveal that there's many benefits and also many risks to swimming. One of the main risks is that unintentional drowning because of elopement was the leading cause of death in children with autism spectrum disorder under the age of 14. Elopement is very common in children with ASD, and it's mainly running or wandering away. However, there's many benefits as well. Swimming is the most preferred physical activity for children with ASD, mainly due to the sensory input that water gives. And swimming has also been found to foster therapeutic, social, and physical benefits for children with autism spectrum disorder. If we look to the left of our screen, we can see a website draft of what the website will eventually look like. There will be 4 different subheadings in this topic that include benefits, risks, how to find effective swimming lessons, and how to enforce water safety in the community and family structures. This is just one topic in an overall arching project that will focus on overall safe recreation and focus on other domains such as team sports, winter sports, hiking, and camping. The future implications of this project are that this resource will aid families of children with ASD to promote safety around water and mitigate these existing barriers, and also boosts confidence for these families to participate in these aquatic activities. In the future, other domains of recreation will also be developed for this resource to accomplish the same goal in these domains. Thank you. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Okay, 2 minutes and 42 seconds was this video. So you're just under. If you did stumble or added 1 or 2 bullet points, you'd still be okay. Let's go to that first slide and give some feedback on this slide first. Any thoughts for Paige and Rebecca?
Consistency with periods throughout, which we had kind of talked with some of the other presentations, either use them or not use them.
I agree.
I think it's a nice clean slide.
Yeah, I see that you're saying why physical activity even matters in the first place and why you're looking at that in the autism spectrum disorder. I think in the last bullet, if that's your main aim, that you should state that like where you're establishing a web page. That was the last thing I read, and I said, okay, so it's a website that they're building from their literature review to provide more information. But it's very clear, the image with the information on the right. Size of your font is great as well. And first group to actually have some references on the bottoms, and that's fine. Okay, let me move towards the second slide and see how we can improve that one. Okay, methods. Periods and sentences. It's great that you've mentioned the funding. If you want, you could even include logos instead of bullet points somewhere. Then they don't have to read that last bullet and make logos. We'll share the MURPH logo with everyone as we shared as well. Any other tips and tricks for this method slide? No? Okay, it's clear. We will move to your next slide. Results. like, I feel like we can make these bullet points shorter. Like instead, we don't have to say initial results reveal. What's your main takeaway of your first bullet point in short point form that you want everyone to take away in the story? So I would start even here. Unintentional drowning leads to what? This was fine. Great. Website draft included.
Comment might be that just define elopement first, that children with autism tend to wander, and this is called elopement, because I think the bullet point was said and then elopement was defined. So I kind of got distracted trying to like, what do they mean by elopement?
I agree. And make sure to actually make it stand out and tell them, draw their attention and say, this is the first draft of the website, as you can see on the left. And you don't even have to include that last bullet. Let me go forward a bit after the results. Implications. I think your first bullet has a space, so you can delete that extra space. Great first sentence. You can bold the parts that you want to stand out. So promote safety could be bolded.
Also, this isn't a very important thing, but it looks like the picture is stretched and cropped a little bit weird, so that might be changed as well.
Any other comments for our group? I think this was their last slide. Yes. Okay, I will stop sharing. Thank you, everyone, for your patience, listening to everyone's presentations, providing the feedback. That was amazing. A great job. I know you're all very busy and you were trying to put together the posters and the presentations. As you know, the posters have been extended. If you need more extension times on that, you can let us know. It's okay. The main focus is for you to really perfect these 3-minute oral presentations, so you're really prepared for the upcoming conferences. I'll pass it off to Natasha so we can wrap this up.
Yeah, so I thank you for all of you that have stuck with us and attended today. And you know, your presentations were excellent, and it really does show how hard you've been working over this term. And this whole knowledge translation or trying to explain your research project in 3 minutes, it sounds like it's easy, but it's probably one of the most difficult things that a researcher actually has to do. A lot of times you have so much to say, and it can be very difficult to convey that information. And then you're also trying to convey that information to groups that are not in your field. So you would almost give a different presentation for, say I went to a conference in inflammatory bowel disease, the area I study. So kudos to you. It was very interesting to finally hear what's become of these projects. So if you can kindly do Megan and I a favor, is take the time to either screenshot if that's fast, or scan your evaluations to us so we can collate these evaluations for you so that you can actually make some of the changes to your presentation so you're ready for next week. And if you can kind of have that to us by Friday by 4 o'clock, that would be super helpful. The other thing is that this is actually our last formal workshop for MURPH. So we look forward to your presentations next week, and we'll be rooting and cheering for you. And Megan and I will kind of try and divide and conquer, because sometimes the presentations are in different concurrent sessions. And so the next kind of steps are, following the conference, we will send out an evaluation, a formal evaluation, because we want to hear what you think about the program, how we can improve it. And we're hoping we can organize an in-person event for those of you that are in Kelowna, just to finally maybe actually meet in person. It's a little bit safer now, and we'll be able to present the MURPH certificates and kind of go from there and have a little mini celebration. So again, thank you for joining us today. We'll collate the results of these presentations, and we'll have 2 top winners based on your scores, and kind of go from there. And if you have any questions before Thursday, Megan and I are happy to help you. Even if you want us to take another look at your presentation or present to us, we're there to help out. So thanks so much, guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Everyone, have a wonderful night.